Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. In this series, we reveal real Cold War secrets and excavate the classified details your government hoped you'd never discover. And here we go. Project Moondust, the UFO recovery team that didn't exist until it did. The Cold War program that collected objects of unknown origin while denying UFOs were real. It was August 1967, and something weighing 3 tons had just crashed in Sudan. The cube-shaped object was made of soft aluminum. It had no markings, no country claimed it, no known satellite matched its description. The American embassy in Khartoum sent an urgent cable to Washington. Within hours, a specialized recovery team was activated. They called themselves Project Moondust. Their job was simple: recover anything that fell from space, especially if the Soviets might want it. But the Sudan object wasn't Soviet. It wasn't American. It wasn't anything in the official catalogs. Welcome to the beautiful hypocrisy of Cold War intelligence, where the same Air Force publicly mocking UFO witnesses was secretly maintaining teams to recover objects of unknown origin. The program that wasn't supposed to exist. For decades, if you asked the Air Force about Project Moondust, they'd tell you it didn't exist. When UFO researcher Robert Todd filed a Freedom of Information request in the 1970s, the Air Force first said they had no records. Then Todd found references in other declassified documents. He asked again. Suddenly, Moondust existed. The Air Force released a letter that laid out the truth in bureaucratic black and white. Moondust was real. It had been operational since at least 1953, and its teams were stationed across the country. The letter spelled out 3 peacetime missions. First, investigate UFOs under Air Force Regulation 200-2. Second, operate Project Moondust to locate, recover, and deliver descended foreign space vehicles. Third, rush interesting items to the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. When satellites don't match the catalog, Moondust's official mission made sense. The Soviets were launching satellites. Sometimes those satellites crashed. America needed to grab Soviet technology before the Soviets could retrieve it. Standard Cold War spy games. But the declassified documents tell a different story. In 1965, teams went to the Republic of the Congo. The Defense Intelligence Agency report title was remarkably honest. Fragment metal, recovered in the Republic of the Congo. Origin believed to be an unidentified flying object. Not a satellite, not space debris, a UFO. The report described how something exploded in the sky between October 10th and 15th, 1965. Witnesses saw an object flying east to west. It exploded. Metal fragments rained down. Moondust teams coordinated ground searches. They recovered the pieces. Then the trail goes cold, buried in classification. The 1967 Sudan recovery was even stranger. The State Department cable described a 3-ton cube made of oblong cubes measuring 2 inches by 1 inch. These smaller cubes were tightly fastened together and covered by a silky material. The embassy took photographs. Those photos remain missing or classified. NASA later claimed it was debris from Apollo AS-203, an unmanned test craft from 1966. But AS-203 broke up over the Pacific Ocean. Its debris was tracked falling into the water. How did 3 tons of it end up in Sudan a year later? The official explanation doesn't match the orbital mechanics. The Kecksburg connection, December 9th, 1965. Something crashed in the woods near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Witnesses described an acorn-shaped object the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. The military arrived within hours. They cordoned off the area. They hauled something away on a flatbed truck covered with tarps. The Air Force said nothing was found. They stuck to that story for 40 years. In 2005, NASA suddenly announced Kecksburg was a Russian satellite, but they couldn't prove it because the records were lost. How convenient to lose the paperwork for that time. A UFO crashed in Pennsylvania, and the military definitely didn't recover anything. Thanks to new Freedom of Information releases, we now know moon dust teams were deployed to Kecksburg. NASA stonewalled for decades about their involvement. When journalist Leslie Keane sued NASA in 2003, the agency finally admitted having documents. They released some. Others remain missing. The men in black were real too. Moon dust operated through intelligence teams. These weren't regular military units. A 1969 NASA memo reveals these teams included personnel who could gain rapid access regardless of location. They had special communication channels. They could write intelligence reports on site. They operated undercover stories. The 1961 Air Force letter admits something else remarkable. These teams were experiencing normal personnel attrition. They were losing qualified people faster than they could train replacements. By 1961, only 21 qualified moon dust personnel remained. Half were scheduled to transfer within 12 months. Think about what that means. The Air Force was struggling to maintain teams for something that supposedly wasn't important. You don't panic about personnel shortages for make-work projects. You panic when you're losing capability for real operations. The pattern of denial. Moon dust reveals the schizophrenia of Cold War UFO policy. Publicly, the Air Force ran Project Blue Book to debunk sightings and calm public fears. Behind classification stamps, they ran moon dust to recover crashed objects, including things they officially said didn't exist. The pattern repeated across agencies. The CIA told Congress they had no interest in UFOs. Declassified documents show they were reading moon dust reports about metallic fragments from unidentified flying objects. The State Department claimed ignorance about aerial phenomena. Their cables tracked moon dust recoveries worldwide, from Morocco to Sudan to the Congo. NASA said they didn't investigate UFOs. Their own 1969 memo discusses moon dust materials forwarded to NASA and meetings with newly assigned moon dust personnel. The most telling detail. Here's what gives away the game. When the Defense Intelligence Agency reported on UFO sightings in Morocco in 1967, they didn't dismiss them. The report stated these sightings showed a high level of interest in the subject of UFOs and presages future reporting, which could be valuable in pursuit of Project Moondust. Valuable in pursuit of Moondust. They weren't studying public hysteria. They weren't debunking weather balloons. They were pursuing something valuable enough to maintain global recovery teams despite personnel shortages and budget constraints, where the bodies are buried. Today, if you file a Freedom of Information request about moondust, you'll get some documents. The State Department has released 22 pages. The Defense Intelligence Agency has released fragments. But when you ask for the good stuff, the operational reports, the recovery analyses, the technical evaluations, you hit a wall. The government admits moon dust existed. They admit it recovered objects of unknown origin. They admit these operations continued at least into the 1980s, but the details remain classified because they would reveal intelligence methods. What intelligence methods? How to pick up crashed objects, how to put them on trucks, how to write reports about them, or how to maintain the fiction that UFOs don't exist while simultaneously running global recovery operations for exactly that. The modern echo. The Air Force claims moon dust is no longer active. They say the project ended, though they won't say when. But the procedures haven't become obsolete. Someone, somewhere, maintains the capability to respond when objects of unknown origin crash on American soil. In 2020, the Pentagon established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. In 2022, they created the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. New names, same mission. Investigate things that shouldn't exist. Recover technology we don't understand. Maintain official denial while running classified operations. The acronyms change, the paperwork multiplies, the classification continues. But somewhere in a room at the Pentagon, someone is reading reports about objects that don't match anything in the satellite catalogs. They're coordinating recovery teams. They're analyzing materials. They're doing exactly what Moondust did under whatever name they're using this week. The verdict. Project Moondust is the perfect Cold War story, not because aliens crashed in Sudan or Pennsylvania, not because the government recovered flying saucers, but because it reveals the impossible position of Cold War intelligence. They had to be ready for everything, even things that didn't exist. They had to investigate UFOs while denying UFOs. They had to recover unknown objects while claiming all objects were known. They had to maintain capabilities for scenarios they said were impossible. The declassified documents don't prove we've been visited by aliens. They prove something more disturbing. They prove the government will build elaborate infrastructure to handle problems it simultaneously denies exist. They prove classification can hide contradictions for decades. They prove that sometimes the cover-up is more interesting than what's being covered up. Moondust teams spent 30 years recovering objects of unknown origin. They filed reports, they collected materials, they analyzed debris, all while their bosses told the public there was nothing to investigate. That's not conspiracy theory. That's conspiracy fact, documented in the government's own paperwork, released through their own Freedom of Information Act, admitted in their own bureaucratic language. The truth isn't out there. It's in a filing cabinet in Maryland, partially declassified, heavily redacted, and stamped with project code names that officially never existed. Until they did. And there it is. Another documented descent into the declassified, filed properly, stamped accordingly, and revealed at last. I'm Nathaniel Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. Be sure to check out Daniel's Substack, The Intelligence Bulletin from author Daniel P. Douglas, for other podcast series, written articles, and links to all of his books. Thank you for listening.